evening and welcome to the GSVA 10 o'clock news. This just in, we have brand new information about the Portuguese in the Atlantic slave trade. With us today we have Miss Catarina. I'm sorry. With us today from Portugal we have Miss Catarina Barracerio. Okay, please tell us your experience with the slave trade.
Well, as you should know by now, my husband, Alfonso, and I own the largest plantation in North Portugal.
Well, that's fantastic. Where did you export most of your slaves to?
Oh, Brazil, of course.
Oh. Were there any difficulties along the way with the surplus of slaves?
Well, some reason our slaves like to run away, and sometimes they get stolen, so we had to resort to branding them with our initials.
Ow.
No, it doesn't hurt.
Next question before the break. What did you do with the slaves through the Middle Passage?
What?
The Middle Passage.
We threw them overboard?
And that concludes our visit with the... What's her name?
It's Catarina.
Oh, I'm sorry. With Miss Catarina from Portugal. Next time, we will meet up with some African ladies about their experience through the Middle Passage. Thank you! Christopher, I need my morning coffee, please. These people here don't know how to... hello, my name is Kay Neek. I am from Africa. This is where I was born. Today in Sub-Saharan news, we have a great-granddaughter of a woman who journeyed through the Middle Passage. Here she is. 500 people were rounded up by a specific Prince Ali Baba. She is here to tell the story of her great-grandmother. Rumour has it that these unfortunate souls travelled on tight small ships, supposedly called the Middle Passage. So, Miss Kunta Kinte, I understand that you participated in the Middle Passage.
Actually, it was my great-grandmother that participated in it. She always told me about how rough it was on her old bones. She saw many sick and dying people, but she always said the children got to her the worst.
Our next question is, I understand that your great-grandmother shared the experience with her sister, Agungabi. Tell me more about that, please.
Yes, Agungabi was my great-aunt, always my favorite. She said that as children, they did everything together. And one day, they were out playing in the garden, and all she can remember is these great big white men scooping them up and telling them not to scream or they'd be killed instantly. And so, on the way there, she asked, where were they going? And he said, oh, we're going to a nice place called Portugal. And at the time, they're young children and they don't know anything about it. And what happens is they're led to this harbor and they're shoved in these deep, dark, cramped, damp ships.
Good evening. My name is Susie Sammons and this is the GSAB 7 o'clock evening news. So, breaking news. The transatlantic slave trade began when the Portuguese interest in Africa changed from gold to a workforce. With us today we have Agungabi Kinwa. Tell us more about it, Gungi.
Well, over the years I met a numerous amount of other slaves. Apparently, they separated Africa into 5 different sectors. Upper Guinea Coast, Ivory Coast, Lower Guinea Coast, Agavan Coast, and Angola. The majority of people I met were from Angola, so I'm guessing that's where most of the slaves were sold from. Even though we were all strangers, we became family. We had to. Religion was what kept us together. In faith, we were family. Well, from what I've heard, the Portuguese invaded Africa because they needed workers and were too weak to do it themselves. So they came upon us Africans with their handheld cannons and fists flying high. They took hostage of us and separated families to make us do garden work and dig minerals for them to use. We were treated awfully during this time, treated like dogs.
That concludes our interviews for today, but we have some additional facts about the Atlantic slave trade. During the era of the Atlantic slave trade, many of these enslaved were actually kept in Africa. Some of the statistics of the slaves were that for every 2 to 3 men that were carried out in the trade, only 1 woman was taken. This reduced the male population by 20% and it dramatically altered the ratio of adult men to adult women.
The result of unbalanced sex ratio was encouraging polygamy. It also reduced traditional male forms of work, such as hunting, fishing, and tending livestock. It produced a less protein-rich diet and a reduction in agricultural productivity. The statistics of people across the Atlantic slave trade were 14% were children under 14 years old, and 56% were male adults, and 30% were female adults. Back to you, Susie. Sally? Back to you, Sally. We're not doing that? Okay, well, that's GSAB News for you. 7 o'clock news. See you next time.